Okay, so this is from Sierra. How would I answer this question on the IMMI unnatural part of his application form? Date committed to de facto relationship. Which date should I put? Thank you so much. Very common question. And I'm glad you've put your relationship facts there because that's always the starting point. So met in June 2002, long distance relationship, LDR, long distance relationship. September 2017, first time living together for a short time, November 2018. And that's when we began talking about the partner visa sending remittances when in long distance relationship. Second time living together, September 2019. We visited an agent to know the steps. June 2021, civil partnership registration, May 15 to present, living together in Queensland. Okay, so Sierra, what I'll say is that, and this is typically my answer when it comes to when did we become de facto. The day a couple become de facto isn't always easily identifiable, and there isn't going to be officially a correct or incorrect date. It depends on all the facts. It's not like the date of marriage, or the date of a civil registration being registered, or a date of an engagement. Those things are a lot more definitive in terms of the day that happened. De facto, it's about looking at everything and putting forward a sensible date and something that you think you can corroborate and prove. However, this is where people get caught up. The reality, though, is the date you put as your de facto date only matters in two ways. Firstly, as long as it's dated prior to lodgement. Okay, because that's ultimately the requirement for a non-true application, being that's what we're talking about here. You need to prove, and because you've registered the relationship, you need to prove you have been in a de facto relationship or were at the time of application. Okay, so as long as the day you put and can prove that day is the 21st of June 2022, you will meet time application criteria. As long as you continue to be in that relationship whilst the visa is processing, you should also meet time of decision criteria. Okay, so that's the first thing. However, the other reason the day becomes relevant is when people are trying to get the double grant. Because if you can put forward that you have been in a committed de facto relationship for 3 years prior to lodgement, as in you can prove it, then you may be eligible for the double grant when they assess your application. Looking at your facts though, I would probably need a little bit more clarification in terms of what you mean by second time living together in September 5th, 2019. We visited an agent to know the steps. If you mean to say that from September 5th, 2019 until now, you've been living together, in your own place, that's an interesting factor, an interesting fact. If you mean that you just spent a little bit of time together, it was still long distance, didn't really start living together until May this year, then it's probably going to be difficult to say you've been in a de facto relationship for 3 years. Therefore, I probably wouldn't be putting too much emphasis on trying to prove you've been de facto for 3 years. It's more about trying to prove de facto now, and looking at your final two kind of facts there. June 2021. Civil partnership registration, May 15 to present, living together in Queensland. Again, I'm a little bit unclear on those days, but really, sometimes couples will go with their civil registration date as an appropriate date to put forward as their de facto date. Sometimes couples will put the day they moved in together formally, got their own joint lease and joint bank accounts around there. Once they had joint leases and joint bank accounts, they will nominate that period more or less when they became de facto. Sometimes all those things happen at once. They move in, joint bank accounts, and apply for the civil union, and then they put up that period as when they became de facto. So, as you can see, Sarah, it does vary, and it will depend. But I think based on my interpretation of the timeline and the facts you've put there, really June 2021. When you receive your civil union, I think is a perfectly acceptable day to put forward as your de facto date. It's in line with your civil union certificate. That's, it's 12 months ago. Not that matters because you don't need to meet the 12-month rule because you are registered. But I think that would be suitable. But the reality is that you could nominate you could put 10 different dates, and it doesn't really matter. What matters is that you're de facto when you apply. Okay, again, unless you're trying to prove de facto for 3 years, then it does matter. But at the end of the day you give them matters less than the evidence you provide to prove your de facto relationship. So you can say any day you want, but if you can't prove it, it doesn't mean anything. So focus more on your proof, on your evidence, and the day you became de facto, I think it's a matter of just sitting down and determining what feels comfortable. But I think going with your civil union certificate registration is fine based on those facts. Hope that answers your question, Sierra.